Mike Waller, Britannia Motorcycles here. Today we're going to start dismantling the engine that we're going to use in our trials bike. As you can see, this is classed as a Triumph, but if we put that on instead, it's a BSA, so don't let anybody fool you. They're all the same thing. You may also notice that we're in the clean bit of the workshop, if you all thought I spent my time in some dingy little shed. What we're going to do is strip this in this film, maybe take 2 films, I don't know, and then we're going to do the couple of mods in another one and then the complete rebuild. So I will go through the things you need to know about this engine, show you some of the tools that you need. There's only a couple of special things, and 1 or 2 of them you can actually make up yourself. So let's get started with this. Alright, as I mentioned, this is classed as a Triumph. It's T25T as opposed to the B25, either T or SS. And there's 2 differences between this and the earlier model, the TR25W for the Triumph and the C25, I suppose, the Starfire engine. The main difference is this rear mounting. On the earlier engines, this is 3 inches wide. On the earlier engines, it was much thinner. And of course, the earlier frame, the rear engine mounting plates are actually welded to the frame, whereas on the frame that we've used, they're a bolt-on plate, which is much nicer. And also, the base of the cylinder is bigger on the later engines than the early ones. This is interchangeable. You just have a little bit of overlap on your gasket, but no great problem. Now, as we dismantle this engine, which, by the way, you see Triumph on there, is basically an extension of the Tiger Cub design. When BSA wanted to go from the pre-unit construction engines, the the B series for the larger ones, for the 350s and the 500s, and the early Cs, C10, C11, etc., for the BSAs, with usual tight-fistedness, instead of really going at it and designing something completely, they realised they had a small unit construction engine in the Tiger Cub. So they took that design, made a couple of changes, vertical cylinder, things like that. So basically this began as a Tiger Cub, and then became the C15, and then the B40 for a 350, and then the B44, and then of course they revamped it completely, well not completely, but they revamped it to make the B25 and the B50. One nice thing is you'll notice the engine stand, which is the best special tool you can make. It really makes things a lot easier than having it rolling around on the bench. But one engine stand fits all of those, right from the C15 up to the B50. You only need one engine stand. So the other thing about this particular motor is some of the bits and pieces had already been scavenged off it slightly. So although I will talk you through things, some bits have already been taken off, so I'll just tell you what you should know rather than being able to show you what you should know. So let's get started with this. What we're going to do is strip this motor in stages, so that for any of you who's watching who aren't necessarily going to take an entire engine apart, you'll be able to see the various bits. So we're going to start with the rocker box, then the head, barrel and piston, so that anybody who's just doing a valve job or a rebore will see that. Then we're going to move over, take off the clutch and the alternator, so you'll see that if you want to put on a new primary drive chain or anything of that sort. Then we'll come over to this side and you'll see the ignition components, kickstart, etc. And then we can take the gearbox internals out, and then finally we'll split the crankcases and deal with the bearings, big end shells and so on. You want to get yourself some little boxes together, and also really of great use is a parts book. The manual also gives you a lot of information, but one of the nice things I always find about a parts book, apart from it making it easier to order parts, is the exploded diagrams. So if you've not laid things out, you can always see how they go together, which piece comes after which piece. And the other really nice thing with these later BSA parts books, one of the few things BSA actually thought out and got right, all the nuts and bolts and studs and etc, it will give you the length, the diameter and even the thread pitch, which is very good. And that's very useful because, for instance, with the cylinder head there are 6 bolts in here, 4 3/8 bolts and 2 5/16. 4 of them really difficult to get at. But the stupid thing is, the 4 3/8 bolts have unified threads. They're 7/16 course at the bottom and 3/8 UNF at the top. But the 5/16 studs are British Standard Fine. 5/16 BSF. Why? I don't know. So let's get started taking this apart. First thing you want to do is have your kickstart on, turn it round to top dead centre. You want the pressure taken off the push rods and off the valve gear so that you can just take these off and the valve springs aren't compressed. So we take it to top dead centre by taking off these caps. And please use the proper size spanner on them, not a chisel or a pair of Stilsons, or as they would say here in the States, I don't know, a pipe wrench would be here in the States. So you take them off so you can make sure that, oops, there's a nut, so that your rockers are free, and then you know there's no pressure on them. Then you'll take off the nuts here, and as I was saying, some of these things have already been taken off, and what you're very likely to find is this will happen. The nut will come off, won't come off, and the stud will come out. Well, that's fine, as long as the threads are alright. We can clean everything up, redo these threads so the nut will go on nicely, and then we can Loctite this back in so that it doesn't come out. If you want, as a little mod, the B50 engine, for instance, is in the frame the same size as the B25, and there is virtually no space at the top. And because the rocker box is on studs, when you take the rocker box off, you don't just take it off, you've got to lift it up high enough to clear all the studs, which of course you can't do if it's tight in the frame. If you're doing a B44, for instance, you can't get the rocker box off, but you can take the head nuts off, and if you lift the head slightly and turn it round like this and then lift it off with the rocker box intact, it will come off with the engine in the frame. But what a dodge for the racing guys is they'll take these studs out and replace them with Allen bolts, and that way when you take them out, the head doesn't have to be, the rocker box doesn't have to be lifted off, it can just slide off like that. Okay, so these nuts had already been taken off. We'll take our little cover off here, put everything related to cylinder head into one little container. Now I can see from this one that someone has used the red silicone type sealer. You get some awful things on these jobs. So, oh, that broke away easier. I think I've maybe had this off already. But the rocker box is really tight. You'll often find that it's because there's so many studs in here. I mean, there's 2, 4, 7, there's 9 studs holding this down. Although there's not a lot of pressure in them, you've got 9 studs that have got to be exactly straight, and after a lot of time when people have had these on and off, they get a little askew and then it doesn't just rise up the way it should. So with a rubber hammer, no metal hammers, no screwdrivers in here, please, wedging them off or you'll never make a seal afterwards. All you can do, and again, don't hit it on the thin edge, hit it somewhere where there's a good bit of metal. go. The joys of working on old bikes. Truth. And when you do, whoops, I was just going to say, when you're doing this, don't let it drop back down, or you're back where you're starting from. There she goes. So there we have our rocker box off, and there you can see this horrible red stuff. So now we've got the valve gear exposed, and we can take out the push rods. Now you see one of them is red. For some reason on the 250 engine the inlet push rod is, I don't know, 1/64 of an inch or something longer than the exhaust push rod. So they colour code the exhaust one with the red. On the B44s and things you'll find that they're the same length. So whether it was the different valve adjustment, this head having eccentric mounts, or what, I don't know. Next thing is to take our nuts off. And then we can take the head off. Now again, these are very often stuck on because people will use a gasket cement down here, which you don't want, or they won't oil or grease the gasket that goes on, so they stick solid. If it's let's take this off. If you need to hit the head, again hit it under there or under here where you've got a good bit of meat. You don't want to be hitting it on the fins. Now the cylinder doesn't really have anywhere solid to hit it, so you've got to use your tennis playing skills. Again, with a rubber hammer, you hit it as if you're giving it some topspin. So you don't just hit it that way, you hit it on an upward one. And the hammer to a certain extent will grip, so you do it like that. And do it in several places, and then you'll break the joint and off this will come. Now if you're just taking the head and barrel off, at this point your pistons are top dead centre, we've set it that way. Put some rags or paper towels down into there to stop bits getting in. We're going to strip this engine completely, so we don't really care about that, so we just pull the barrel off. Put that to one side. So here we are at the piston. Now I'm going to stop the video for a moment because I've forgotten to get a couple of things that I need to take this piston off. I don't want you just standing around waiting. So let me turn it off. Back again. Now you can get take my glasses off here so I can see close up. First thing you've got to do is take out the circlip. And circlips are those wonderful things that go ping and disappear. So in advance, when you order circlips, I always order extra because chances are you're going to lose one. You can put a bit of cloth over it, but then of course half the time you can't see. Now there's a little slot here at the side for you to get something in behind the clip, and then you just got to work your way around. Get one end out, there it is. Woo! So we're going to put new ones in anyway, we'll keep that. Now next thing, the gudgeon pin, or the wrist pin as they call it here, on these engines is held tight in the piston and it moves in the small end eye. Some pistons, the floating type pistons, it's the other way around. It's a sort of sliding fit in the piston and almost a press fit in the small end eye, and the piston itself moves on the pin. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat it up. There'll probably be smoke and all sorts of stuff because this one's oily and dirty, but once you heat it up, you'll find it will come out easily. Now, of course, what we have to do is turn it around because we've taken the clip out of that side, so we've got to push it this way. So we're just going to warm up the two sides of the piston. You don't really have to warm the whole thing up. Have a cloth handy because the piston's going to be hot and you need to hold it. What we're doing is heating the aluminium up so it expands and it makes the hole slightly bigger, and that will release its grip on the gudgeon pin. Now you can get gudgeon pin extractors, which are this strange contraption that goes around the piston. It's like a strap that goes around the piston, has a hole in it on the other side, and this side there's a pin which you screw in and it pushes the gudgeon pin out through the hole on the other side of the strap. All very exotic. What I always use is a piece of dowel. You want something soft that won't damage anything, but solid to be able to push the pin through. So we'll see if that's right. There it goes. Then it just pushes straight through. Once you've warmed it up, it's as easy as anything. Then off comes the piston. You see it's pushed through there. Goes in and out quite easily while it's hot, but once that cools down, it will grip on that again. So if you're keeping your piston, you would measure it, make sure everything's alright, check your piston ring, grooves, everything. We're putting a new piston in, so if you are reusing the piston, this one's got some scoring on it, but not much. If it measures up okay, and you're just going to say replace piston rings, use one of the old pistons, break a piece off. Be careful when you break them, they're cast iron, they will snap, but bits from the break might fly out. Just break a short piece off and use that to clean out the piston ring gap, because of course it's the right size, it fits in nicely. Scrape it all the way around, clean it off before you put your new piston rings in. Okay, now you'll notice, hope you can see, on these later ones that there's no bushing in there, it just runs in the alloy. There's a little hole in the top to let some splashed oil get in there, but that's all. The earlier 250s had a bronze bush in there. Now what we are going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of cloth in here just to stop this from banging around, because it's aluminium and you don't want it getting damaged. I have somewhere laid about, of course I can't put my hand on it, some of those pieces of foam insulation that they use for water pipes. You know, they're sort of foam and they're split so you can put it around the pipe. They're perfect. Cut yourself a piece this long and just slide it on. Job's done. It'll even grip. So there you are. You're ready if you want to do a top end job. And what we will do when it's completely stripped is I'll go back and we're going to take the valves out, check the valve guides and things like that. So you'll see all of that. Last piece of dismantling for the top end is the head. We're going to take the valves out so that we can check the wear in the valve guides and You could be measuring the valve springs to see if they need replacement, but again, with this particular engine, we're just going to replace everything. Now, these heads are easy to work on. You can just do it on the bench here, or if you want, you can make yourself up one of these. This actually is an old bit of handlebar with a spark plug welded into the end, and then all you do is you thread that into the plug hole. Now when it's all the way in, you stick that in the vise, and there you go. It's held there for you to work on it. But as I say, these heads are so easy to work on. We don't really need that. But what you do need is a valve spring compressor. You can get them in kits like this that have all sorts of extra bits for different sized ones. Or you can get very simple ones. So all we're going to do is put this part on the valve head and then this part onto the valve. Oh, not really onto the valve, onto the top of the cover for the valve spring. Now take up the pressure, and then with a hammer, this is to break the joint with the collets. Oops, in fact one of them's even jumped out, look. Then we just tighten that down to compress the valve spring till we're clear of the little groove that the collets go in. Take the two valve collets out, or as they're called in the States, keepers. Then release the pressure on the spring. And it'll all come apart. Outer spring, inner spring, there's the top collar, and there's also a bottom collar, which of course is proving awkward to get out. Now keep all the bits for each valve together. And to check the valve guides and valves, you would measure the diameter of the valve stem and look it up in your workshop manual, and it'll tell you what's acceptable wear for that. You can also measure the inside diameter of the valve guide, and again it will tell you in the manual what that should be. The obvious easy way to do it is just to put the valve back in. You saw me cleaning it there. You don't want any oil on it, or that'll take up some of the space. You just put it in, get hold of both ends, and see if you can wobble it. This one, it's got a little in. Yeah, if you can hear it clicking as you go backwards and forwards, which you can hear, then there's too much wear. So we would change the valve guides. So let's get a little bag which says exhaust on it. The valve in, springs in, and there we go for that. And then the second one obviously is just a repeat of the first. So you want to be able to see this, so there we go. Turn that into the bottom of the valve, make sure that's seated squarely. Start a little bit of pressure on it, and give it a tap. If you don't give it that little tap, you'll start to wind it up and nothing will seem to happen. Then all of a sudden the grip on the collets will be released and there'll be a sudden bonk and it frightens the life out of you. And of course, like everything small in an engine, collets will leap out and fall on the floor, so we'll have to look for that in a minute. Well, will you look at that? Nice graphic example for you people. See, do I show you stuff or what? The valve spring has actually snapped. So obviously we won't be using that one again. Let's try this here again. Just clean it off. Put it back inside and give it a wobble. There's actually less play in the inlet. Well, no, there's about the same. Definitely want replacing. So although we're not going to use these springs just for now, we'll stick everything together. That way we won't lose it. And where is did you believe it? I found it. So there we go. So there you go with our bits and pieces here. You can see the condition inside there. We're going to get all this bead blasted, so that'll all come up nicely. Oh, I forgot the bottom thing. Now I'll cover replacing the valve guides in the little section when we're rebuilding the head, because when you replace valve guides, it's not enough just to grind the valves in. Although obviously the valve guide is very tight fit, it's a press fit. We're going to use the oven to heat it up to drive these out. When you put new valve guides in, they're not going to be in exactly the same line as the ones you took out. So what you need to do is have the valve seats recut. And the tool is very simple. It's just a cutter on a mandrel, and the mandrel goes into your new valve guide so that the cutter is exactly aligned to the valve. So the head, the new valve seat is going to be perfect for the valve head for the new valve in the line that it travels in. Some people prefer not to take the guides out. They get them reamed out and they put, you can get valve guide liners, but to be honest, it's so easy to change and then get the valve seats recut that I always replace the guides. And as I say, we'll do that in the rebuild. So that's it for the top end. We'll move on to another part of the engine.